everybody, I'm Angela Hart. Welcome to the Heart of New York show. Today's segment is about Independence Care System and how it treats and cares for elders with respect to CDPAP, which we're going to talk about, and also specialized wheelchairs. And so my guest on the show is Danny Perry. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you for having me, Angela.
It's good to have you, Danny. Would you please tell the viewers what you do at Independence Care System and what Independence Care System does in general to treat elders?
Sure. So my name is Danny Perry. As mentioned, I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Independence Care System. We are a nonprofit managed long-term care plan dedicated to supporting older adults and people with physical disabilities, providing the needed home care, healthcare, and social services so they can remain as independent as possible. We're similar to other managed long-term care plans in that we provide an array of services in addition to home care, transportation and medical appointments, dental, vision, hearing, occupational therapy, and so forth. But we also have a number of specialized programs and services that meet the needs of our members, and they're all free of charge. So we have a comprehensive wheelchair program, which we're going to go more into later on. We have a dementia program. We have a care transition program for people who are in the hospitals transitioning back into the community, a wound care program, and a host of other specialized services. We also provide CDPAP, as we're going to talk about today as well.
Thank you. So it's a full-service care organization, nonprofit here in the New York area. Viewers, do you know that you can get paid to take care of your loved one? There's a program called CDPAP, or also known as CDPAS. So Danny's going to tell us about how this program works.
Sure, Angela. There are a couple ways for a person to receive home care. First, it can be through a licensed home care agency where that agency sends a home health aide into the home to provide those services, or the second option is called Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program, or better known as CDPAP, where a person or the person they designate as their representative can hire, train, and supervise the personal care aide for that individual.
So viewers, it's very important you catch this. If you get into one of these programs, you can get paid, you can get trained, and actually hired by your loved one to take care of you. So tell us more about it. How does someone sign up for this? Who pays for it? How does it work?
Sure. So a person, first of all, has to be Medicaid eligible and in need of long-term services. And if so, they can enroll into a managed long-term care plan, such as Independence Care System, and choose this program. And so there are advantages as well as disadvantages to the program, and we can talk a little bit about that as well.
So Danny, what are the advantages of the CDPAP or CDPAS program?
So there are various advantages to the CDPAS program. One of the main ones is that a person can hire, train, and supervise someone that they know, someone they trust. It could be even a parent, it can be a neighbor, uncle, aunt, daughter. The only individuals that cannot provide the service, for example, is a health proxy or a spouse, someone who's basically legally responsible for your care. So there's a real broad range of individuals who can provide that service.
But a health proxy, I'm confused about that because I have a friend right now who doesn't have a close relative, and she's asked me to be her health proxy, meaning if something were to happen to her and she couldn't speak for her own needs, I would be the person to be able to speak for her. So you're telling me I can't be her CDPAP person?
So what that health proxy could do is they can be the person's representative. So let's talk a little bit about what Consumer Directed really stands for. Essentially, Consumer Directed means the person is able to direct their own care. And if they can't do it, it's someone that they designate to provide that service. So a health proxy, a power of attorney can act as their representative, and they can be the ones that hire the personal care aide, but they can't actually be the personal care aide themselves.
Okay, that makes sense. And who's eligible?
So to be eligible for the CDPAP program, a person has to be on Medicaid or be eligible and then get onto Medicaid, and they have to be in need of long-term services for at least 120 days, in which case they have the ability to enroll into a managed long-term care plan like Independence Care System. We've been doing this program for about 17, 18 years, and we were actually the first, and up to, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, the only managed long-term care plan in the state of New York to provide this service.
Really?
Yes.
That's wonderful that your company had the foresight to understand that there could be something
Yeah.
beneficial to
Yeah.
the average family.
Yeah, and one of the things about the Consumer Directed Program, which is so great, is it provides a lot of flexibility. So a person who might need a high level of care that can't get it through traditional personal care aid because of limitations, for example, someone who's sent over from a licensed home care agency, that aid cannot draw blood, it can't give insulin shots, they can't do catheterization, so they're very limited because of training and liability issues. But through the CDPAS program, the aid, or actually the person who hires the consumer or the person they designate, has to be the one who can direct the care for that individual. So those aides can provide a higher level of care, and it allows people who might otherwise have to go into an institution because they need a higher level of care that can't be provided by a traditional home care, personal care aide.
I see. I've been noticing a lot of ads going up now, print ads that say, "Get paid to take care of grandma." What kind of companies are placing those ads?
So things have really opened up in the last few years, and there's something called a fiscal intermediary, and the fiscal intermediary is responsible for all of the paperwork and the payment system, and the state essentially has opened this up, and then you have now a lot of traditional licensed home care agencies that are now taking on the role of a fiscal intermediary. So you're seeing it a lot. The challenge is CDPAS is not for everyone. There are requirements and things that need to be thought about.
Such as what?
Yeah, so for example, you are essentially the employer, right? So you're responsible for hiring the aides, and so if you have a couple of aides and in a particular day one is out of town and the other's sick, you can't call the managed long-term care plan and say, send an aide over to the home.
Oh.
You're responsible. And also, if that person is not doing their job, then you're responsible for, if need be, firing them. So
Interesting.
you have to understand that there are some responsibilities. You're also responsible for the payroll, so making sure that you report to the fiscal intermediary the hours the aide is working. And so, as you can see, a person who might not have the cognitive ability to be consumer directed might not be a perfect candidate, or they have to have a representative who can handle that on their behalf.
Interesting. So the fiscal intermediary handles the financial side of it?
The fiscal intermediary is responsible for the paperwork, making sure the aides are allowed and legally to work in the U.S. They also have to make sure that the payment is all the timesheets are in, and then the checks get paid and so forth. So they handle all of that on behalf of the CDPAP program. I wanted to mention one other thing about an advantage which I skipped over. As I mentioned, flexibility. The great thing about CDPAS is that you don't have to have a standard set of hours for a particular day. If a person's assessed, for example, for 40 hours of home care a week, you can decide you want 1 hour on this day, 8 hours on the other day, 2 hours on that day, and so there's a lot of flexibility in that. When you're going through the traditional home care model, it's going to be very standard. You can have the certain amount of hours on every single day, so you're really locked into that. I know with our organization, Independence Care System, we actually have some of our members that actually work for us, and they're part of the CDPAP program. And so, for example, when they're working during the workday, they don't need an aide there.
Right.
But the aide might be there in the morning to help them get dressed and prepare them for the day, and then they would come back to the house, let's say at the end of the day, or meet them at the job, take them home, and prep them for the night. And so that helps them support the independence and help them be active and get out and working and being productive. We have a number of wheelchair users that are members and also work for us, and so they're a great example of our support of people with disabilities. It shows that these are individuals that can be productive if you support their independence, and we provide them with the services, wheelchairs being one of them, that allow them to work and be productive citizens.
How do they get a job with you, these people that are members of Independence Care System that might like to work for Independence Care
Right.
System?
So, I mean, we have close to 7,000 members, so we can't employ every
No.
individual. But a lot of our members have unique skills, and we've been able to find out what those skills are. We have a number. We have one particular member who's actually doing podcasts for us, and she interviews different people, different members, different staff as well, and we talk about different, topics, and they're able to provide kind of a unique perspective on our
Yeah.
organization and what we do.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. What other job functions are people hired in?
So we have someone who is a manager. I think his title's manager of advocacy. I'm not exactly sure, who goes out and helps individuals if they have issues with housing or whatever the case may be, if they need fair hearings. And so they're really supporting the member. And as a member themselves, they're kind of like a peer-to-peer, but at the same time, they're also an ICS staff member.
Excellent.
So individuals that work in our intake department, member service coordinators, so a whole host of areas.
Were there any things you wanted to share with the viewers before we go into our next segment and demonstrate the wheelchairs?
Sure. So we do have a CD Pass flyer on our website. I'll make sure I get that over to you. But you can download it on our website by going to www.icsny.org.
And I'll have that on the screen during the show.
Yep.
Okay, so let's take a look at this next segment, all about the special wheelchairs that Independence Care System has.
Thanks so much, Angela.
Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Hart from the Heart of New York show, and I have a guest from Independence Care System, which is an MLTC, Managed Long-Term Care Organization. And Managed Long-Term Care Organizations are the arm of Medicaid that deals with the care of seniors who are on Medicaid, and Medicaid itself deals with the financial side. And this particular organization is all about keeping seniors independent, and that's what I really like about them. And so I have a guest who I'm going to have introduce herself to you and tell you a little bit about her background, and then we'll take a look at some of the different wheelchairs and how they are built differently for different needs. So please, Rachel, introduce yourself to the viewers.
Thank you. I'm Rachel Spires. I'm an occupational therapist and clinical specialist with Independence Care System's Rehab Department. I've been with ICS about 10 years and an occupational therapist for a little bit longer than that. At Independence Care System, I specialize in seated and wheeled mobility, which is a fancy way of just saying wheelchairs and the specialized seating that goes along with that. We also look at custom bathing equipment, accessibility, ramps, and the opportunity for people to get into their bathrooms again.
So Rachel, we're going to look at the different chairs and how they're built differently, and they have different mechanisms to accommodate seniors. But what are some of the issues that come up when you're trying to fit the right chair for a senior?
We look at any number of things. So when somebody comes in to meet us for the first time, we ask them a number of questions. We're looking at what their apartment is like, what their home is like, whether or not there are any barriers, stairs coming up to it, narrow doorways, tight corners, how heavy the person is, how tall they are, what their body shape is like, what their injury or illness has left them with in terms of function, what they're able to do for themselves, what they want to do for themselves.
Wow.
It's an involved process.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining that, and let's go through each of the different chairs. Viewers, I had no idea that there were so many different aspects to wheelchairs. So if one of your loved ones needs a wheelchair, please don't just go and get any old wheelchair from a pharmacy or another place where you can order one without being properly fitted, because what I'm learning from Independence Care System is it can greatly impact the way the person gets healthier or becomes less mobile. It can do one or the other. So let's take a look at some of the chairs.
Absolutely. So I brought in a selection of our demo chairs that we have in our office. This one right here is what you'll standardly see issued in a hospital. It's really designed for somebody who has short-term use. Perhaps they need to get to an appointment or from the emergency room to the x-ray department, something along those lines. It's not really designed at all for any kind of long-term sitting. As we move down the line, we're going into chairs that require a little bit more of an evaluation, and also the individual has more specialized needs.
So what would this chair be missing as to why it wouldn't be good for long-term use, for instance?
Oh, these armrests are not going to fall at the right height, so because they're not adjustable.
Oh,
So what that means is somebody's arm might be cranked up into their shoulder, which is really uncomfortable, or perhaps they're going to have to lean over to meet their arm. And the human body is amazing. It will look for a position of comfort or a position of support. So you might have somebody who has a normal posture, and then if they're sitting in a chair that's too wide, say we were to put you into this chair, we'd probably have this much room on one side. So you would slump over to find a position to rest, then you would go like this, and then you would go like this over time.
so this, an improper chair that's just a temporary chair, we'll call this, to move somebody a short distance could really interfere with someone's posture and long-term physical.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can develop pressure sores because you're sitting unevenly, you're putting more weight on one side of your body, or even you've slid over and you're coming up against this edge here, so you'll get a wound on another bony part of you. You have no opportunity to rest out of gravity, so you come like this,
Oh my
and then your
gosh.
head will come out like this. There's a lot that can go on just from sitting poorly.
Sitting poorly or choosing the wrong wheelchair can give somebody neck aches, shoulder aches, sores.
Yes, sores, you can get respiratory complications because you're sitting and your chest is crushing in, so you're
Oh.
not getting a great breathing. You can get digestive issues, drainage issues, because things are not in line, so food and fluids don't move through you properly. A number of complications from poor sitting.
So take from this, viewers, not to just go get any old wheelchair for your loved one. It really can have damaging long-term effects. And I just learned this today, so I want you to know that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go to the next chair.
All right, so this is often miscalled as a sports chair, but this is really, it's an ultralight chair, and it's a custom wheelchair that's for somebody who uses the wheelchair for every part of their mobility. So oftentimes we'll see somebody with a spinal cord injury or an amputation or something along those lines using this particular chair. We look at somebody's length of their legs, where their arms fall relative to these armrests. We look at how high the back needs to be to provide them with good support. We look at how long their feet are or how long their legs are so that we can properly support their feet. If the knees are too high, then you put increased pressure on somebody's backside, and that gives yet another opportunity for a wound to develop.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Now, does Medicaid pay for the cost of these chairs?
Medicaid will pay for a chair if somebody needs it for use in their home and also in their community. Independence Care System, as a managed Medicaid, looks not only to somebody's medical diagnosis and medical condition, but also their functional need. That's why we ask so many questions about what people do in their day-to-day life, why we're interested in what their functional needs are, what their lifestyle is like, where they go during their day, if they're in school, if they volunteer at their church, if they volunteer at their library. All of these sorts of things we want to know. So this kind of chair we'll see for somebody typically who's a younger adult with a spinal cord injury. So I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that it's only going to be a young adult who uses this kind of wheelchair. We did one the other day for a lady who was quite senior. She was in her 90s and she had advanced arthritis. So she was fairly weak. She had a lot of pain, but she still was very independent, very interested in being able to move herself where she wanted to be in her home. This chair, with its light weight and our ability to make it so that she had great access to be able to push the wheel where she needed to push, we were able to measure her needs, fit the chair to her, and she's totally independent in her home and on level surfaces outside, whereas before she was using a walker and falling a bit, or using a chair like this and completely dependent even in her own home.
And tell me, did you want to talk about the ruler?
So when people come in, we're not using our fingers and guessing what their measurements are across their hips or what their measurements are in the leg length here and here. We have different measuring tools where we're reaching across somebody's hip. We check chest and shoulder width depending on what sort of chair we're making for them. We use standard tape measures to measure some of the parts that get a little bit trickier to reach than otherwise with this tool. So these calipers are, I'm not sure what industry they come from, but we like to appropriate things, so we use them all the time because it's a really great way to get a good measurement. We know that we're able to account for any clothing that might be giving us a misperception or just even come around the tissue that might be falling out unusually.
Well, this is terrific. So Independence Care System really takes care to make sure that the member is fitted properly for every chair that they put them in.
Absolutely.
That's great. Let's look at the next one.
Sure. So this chair here is a tilt and space wheelchair. You can see it has the small wheels here at the back. So this is a chair for somebody who is unable to move themselves. They've had a stroke and they're not able to use one arm and one leg, or maybe they have a progressive condition like multiple sclerosis or dementia where they're just not able to move and position themselves. So this chair enables us to seat someone to support their head and neck, and we're also able to tilt them in space, which I can show you. So we're now able to tilt someone back, which is a position of great comfort, but also medically very important. What it does is it passively allows the rib cage to expand, so it enables people to take a deep breath, which is going to lower your chances of developing pneumonia if you can have a good solid cough to get anything out that you have as a result of a cold. Being able to have that cough is very important. It also takes the weight off the seating surface and transfers it to your back, which gives the skin an opportunity to refill the blood and the oxygen to get back into the tissues, and then you're less likely to develop any kind of wounds. We also have a head support here, which is just a more comfortable place to be when you're tilted back like this rather than trying to hold your head up. Yeah, so your head support here, we can adjust it according to what your position is. So sometimes over time, you notice that gravity makes you look a little bit like this and your head has come out because, again, the body is an amazing thing and it will accommodate. What most people look for is to maintain contact with their environment and the loved ones in their life. So the human body, if it's sliding over this way and it's falling forward, you're always going to see this kind of posture happen. And it's astonishing what we do to maintain contact with the loved ones in our lives, but also very detrimental to our body. So having the opportunity to tilt back in space like this, to rest, to expand all of these tendons which are getting tight, the muscles are getting tight, just really allows people the opportunity to rest in comfort and also stays some of this development into this kind of posture.
So Rachel, can the member who's in this wheelchair control it, or it's up to their caregiver?
In this particular chair, it is up to the caregiver. We have a push handle back here, and this is actually an adjustable stroller handle, so you can change it according to the height of whoever the caregiver is, which is really lovely if you have a tall caregiver and maybe your other home attendant is a little bit less tall. They can adjust this themselves, so it's much more comfortable to push somebody.
Yeah, because we have to consider the caregivers. They're under so much stress as it is, and they're not always that strong themselves. Some of these people are in their 70s, pushing around 90-year-old parent, and it is hard to push so much weight in front of you. So it's good to know that these chairs are adjustable.
And what's interesting about these chairs, even though they are bigger and they weigh more than, say, a hospital chair like this, because they're designed differently, it's actually easier to push it through space. The way that the person who's sitting in it weight falls over top of these wheels makes it an easier thing to move through space. Many times our home attendants will be reluctant to take on moving someone through this because they think it's going to be so much heavier than coming out of this chair, but then they push it around and they're struck and they're like, oh my God, I thought it was going to be so much heavier, but it really is much lighter. We choose different front wheels like this that are a little bit wider, that make it easier for people to be able to push, because when we look at it, like you mentioned, we are very, very interested in knowing who else is involved in someone's care and how we can make everyone's life easier and more comfortable.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. Let's look at the next one. So tell us about this chair. How does this differ from the other three?
All right, so this is a power wheelchair, what some people call an electric wheelchair, but it is operated by batteries. It has two motors that control these two drive wheels right here, and you control it with this joystick, and you're able to move through space.
You mean the actual member can control this themselves?
Absolutely.
And can a caregiver control it also, or would it be counterproductive? They're better with the other one?
Some people have a condition like MS or like ALS or something along those lines where they do fatigue out, and we will put an attendant control back here so that somebody else is able to control the chair, or most times, because it's just a little bit easier to drive from here than an attendant control, people will drive from here. You can push it, we can disengage the motors, but it's a very heavy system and you wouldn't want to do that unless it were absolutely needed.
So would the attendant have a joystick, an electronic joystick in the back?
They can have one back here, yes, if it's needed.
Interesting. Tell us more.
All right, so this power wheelchair has a lot of different functions to it. Again, we have the headrest, and we have this is their standard back, but we can look at what kind of foam is in there if somebody has a really bony back. We can also look at putting other kinds of backs, say you wanted to do one more like this, or somebody had a postural deformity that you needed to accommodate. We could put a specialized back on that. This one has a custom cushion, a ROHO cushion on it, which is for people who either have breakdown or are at high risk for developing breakdown. So there's a little valve here, and then we have pumps, and you can just put the appropriate amount of air in it. So you need to have the person sitting in the chair. You need to check where they sit into it by checking with your hand how far submerged they are into this air. We can also look at using our pressure mapping system, which is essentially a sheet of sensors, probably 20-inch square, that just slides between the person and the cushion, and then we'll sit them on there, and it gives us a reading of where the peak pressure areas are. So it's a color representation. So you can see where somebody is likely to have a pressure breakdown, and then we can look at filling the air appropriately, or if they're getting a really bad reading and it looks like this is a bad choice of a cushion for them, we can move to different kinds of cushions. There are a number of options necessary.
So how does a family member let Independence Care System know that they are needing a chair? Who do they call at Independence once they're on your plan?
Once they're on our rolls, they let their care manager know.
So thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and talking
Pleasure.
about the different wheelchair models that Independence Care System has to offer their members.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Heart of New York show. We're on every Tuesday night in Staten Island at 8 p.m. on Channel 34, and we also air in all the other boroughs at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday nights on FiOS, so we hope you'll find us on the other stations as well. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.